Hello and welcome to Raise a Glass. Oh, that sounds like a podcast voice. Hello and welcome to Raise a Glass, the podcast where we talk about the stories and storytellers that shape us. Somehow, after all these months, we're still around, still trying to work on these episodes, which we love so much. My name is Eric Linsela.
And I am Hunter Danson.
And Hunter, it is very exciting to be back with you, kind of testing our legs, in a sense, our vocal cords, I guess, as we get another episode started and hopefully kind of kick off another run of episodes that connects with stories and storytellers that have shaped us for a while and some newer ones that are kind of still shaping us, maybe, or in the process of shaping us. But as is our tradition on this podcast, before we get into that, first I got to know what is in your glass.
Well, I have a Charlie Brown ale.
Charlie Brown,
handcrafted in New York. It's connected in New York. This was a gift from my mom. Sort of Christmas birthday. They visited us this past weekend. I have already had one, but not this evening, so there we go.
Nice.
Very nice, smooth brown ale. Great for winter. What's in your glass, Eric?
So I made the decision to work. I had some time today after our kids' swim lessons to work out, and so I have a nice lemon lime Gatorade thirst quencher.
Nice. Is that your favorite color of Gatorade?
Until you get into some of those like extra colors. I like purple Gatorades and yellow Gatorades. And the dark blue ones. Not regular blue though. I didn't grow up drinking lots of Gatorades or anything like that. So yellow was like, if we got it, it was like the powdered stuff that you'd put in a big those big, sports drink massive coolers.
Yeah, the ones they dump on people.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. How's your Charlie Brown ale?
Oh, very good. Very good.
I'm pretty sure if I drank one of those in this episode, I would fall asleep by the end of it. So. Well, let's continue. As is also tradition, what are you raising and pouring one out for this week?
Oh, boy. I did not think about this at all.
You're the one that said we had to do an intro, so this is totally on you.
Well, it's been a while, so...
You got to give the listeners what they want.
I'm just pouring one out for the busyness of life and scheduling. I don't think either of us thought that we would, be a professional podcast, and I don't think that's what we want. But we did start out having like weekly episodes, and that's just not realistic because we're both, working and we have kids, and it's tough. And but some of the favorite things some of our favorite stories were created by people who it was not their main job.
Yeah.
And we're doing this because we really enjoy the conversation. So I'm raising a glass. I know it's a bit of a cop-out just to recording again and doing something.
Well, that's good. I love it.
How about you?
I also did not give any forethought to this. And I actually agree entirely wholeheartedly with everything you said. And I think I would actually echo your pouring one out. One of the reasons we don't record as often as we used to is because we used to have the time to hang out and talk outside of our podcast episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But where we're at right now in our lives, it's so much. It takes so much work to even just get time to talk, and so
Mm-hmm.
the podcast episode is something we love, but it's hard to do that if you're not continuing the friendship and relationship.
Yeah.
Right. There's the beautiful language from. There's a beautiful quote from probably the only good Ben Stiller movie, or at least high quality one, The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, where he's interacting and talking with a man who shoots photos for the National Geographic, and the man decides not to take a photo, this beautiful photo. And he says some things are too beautiful to be filmed, or like are
Mm-hmm.
so strong in what they are that it'd be a loss to try and mimic that. And what I'm thinking about that is that not every and you use a different quote for this, but not everything that we share is something that is worth or is even right to share on a
Right.
podcast. So that was long.
Mm-hmm.
Getting back into this, and then I'm gonna raise a glass. In fact, to the soon-to-be older podcast friend of mine. Yeah. I'm going to raise a glass to you, Hunter. I know you've got a birthday
Man.
coming up. By the time this episode comes out, you will already have had that birthday. But I really
Mm-hmm.
have appreciated, I don't know, the last 13 years of walking with you and all this stuff, and excited for the next 30 and more. So here's to you. I'll raise my
Thank
Gatorade.
you. Cheers.
Cheers. Okay. So we've got a fun episode coming today, and it's one of our grab bag episodes.
Yeah.
So in this, if we are actually staying to our desired timing, we will probably talk with anywhere between 4 and 10 different stories and storytellers that have shaped our lives in small ways, or at different times, in a back and forth type of conversation. And so,
Mm-hmm.
Hunter, we had one that we had already planned, and so I figure let's start there and let's go from there into chaos.
Yes.
What are we going to start with? What are you bringing to the table?
It's. I am bringing The Dream of a Ridiculous Man by Fyodor Dostoevsky. Perfect man to go into chaos with. And I had picked this one because we're planning to do Paralandra for our next episode by C.S. Lewis. And I'm excited for that episode. And if you would like to read it, it's a pretty short book. You could probably get through it by the time we get around to the episode. But The Dream of a Ridiculous Man is a really, like, it really was like uncanny how much it reminded me of Paralandra, because I read this shortly after reading Paralandra, because it's about a guy who I think he eventually works himself. He's like really struggling with nihilism, which you see a lot of Dostoevsky's characters doing, because it was kind of a theme during his day, and I think it's something he probably struggled with himself. But he's keeps working up to kill himself, and he has this dream where he does it, and he's like dead for a while in his coffin, and then he gets like transported to another planet.
Interesting. I didn't get that far.
It looks a lot like it it looked like a Greek archipelago, and it's like he lands somewhere on the mainland, and he says it was an earth as yet undefiled by the fall. It was inhabited by sinless people who lived in that paradise in which, according to the tradition of all mankind, our sinful ancestors had lived, with this difference, that the entire earth was one and the same paradise. These people, smiling gladly, crowded around me, showering me with affection. They took me to their homes, and each of them sought to set me at ease. Oh, they did not ask me any questions. It was as if they knew all about it already, and they sought to drive the suffering from my face as quickly as they were able. And as the dream progresses, he like really kind of, he's incredibly affected by these people. They're sweet, like they're innocent, totally trusting love. And and eventually he ends up corrupting them, not on purpose. He like lets something slip about a lie or something, and just the concept of a lie just starts to infect the people. And it's this incredible like progression. You know, it's a really short story. It's like let me see how many pages here. It's page 108 to page 128. So it's like 20 pages. And he says he doesn't quite remember how he infects them. But he talks to them a lot, and I guess it sort of comes from his speech, this idea of lying, and that's how it starts. They learn how to lie. It starts off innocently, and then the germ of the lie keeps going through, and then there's lechery and jealousy and cruelty and blood, and it's just this really tragic progression to all of the vices and of our history and our present that we know today. And he tries to like plead with them, and they have this attitude of like, oh no, we know the truth now. Thank you for telling us the truth. You know, we're enlightened now, and that's their sort of attitude. And then he wakes up. And from this point on, he basically starts preaching. Like, he starts preaching to anyone who will hear him. And I know that my summary is not quite the best, but you should really read it for yourself. But I think one of the main quotes that I want to share that really affected me and shaped me was, "That's what the scoffers cannot comprehend. They say he's been dreaming, he's rambling, hallucinations. Well, what of it? And they're so proud of themselves. Dream? What's a dream? Isn't this life of ours a dream? I'll go further. Suppose it never ever comes true and there is no paradise. Now that I do understand. Well, I'll still go on preaching. And yet how simple a matter it is. In one day, in 1 hour, it could all be brought about at once. The chief thing is to love others as oneself. That's the main thing, and that's it. Absolutely nothing more is necessary. You would immediately discover how to bring it about. And yet, it's just the old truth after all. An old truth 1,000,000,000 times repeated and preached, though it fell on stony ground, didn't it?" And then this quote, the cognition of life is superior to life. The knowledge of the laws of happiness superior to happiness. And that's what has to be fought against. And I shall. If only everyone desired it, it could all be brought about at once.
Why? Why did it shape you?
Well,
Which part?
The cognition of life is superior to life. The knowledge of the laws of happiness superior to happiness, and that's an idea that the main protagonist was struggling with, and the attitude that he finds in people who, kind of scoff at the idea that you could change the world just by loving your neighbor. Um, and I've been thinking about it a lot because I think we've arrived at a point in our culture where we really value the cognition of life. Like, we want to understand how to live our best life. We have all of these scientific behavior studies about you'll be happier if you exercise or do all of this stuff, and the knowledge of the laws of happiness, we think that's superior to happiness. But I feel like it's so easy, speaking for myself, to get caught up in trying to be better, that I sort of miss the happiness that's right in front of me. And we're humans are so good at making ends of their means. We turn the means of getting happiness into the end of it, like, and I feel like we kind of worship those means. But
you had recommended it to me, and I read through or did kind of listen through the first 20 minutes of it, so probably the first 5 pages or so, and I did not get to the point where he started dreaming, and so it was very, very depressing what I was reading. So I'm encouraged to hear that there's a couple twists that come up.
There's actually a happy ending.
Don't tell me. I know we're a spoiler-filled podcast, but in this particular case, I plan on reading this very shortly.
Okay.
So I would prefer to have that shared at a future time.
That's all I was going to say. Just it has a happy ending, which is rare for Dostoevsky.
Yes, that is a surprise to me. I was like, how in the world is this story at all like Paralandra? It's like I'm understanding a little bit more with your summary. Mm-hmm. When did you first read this one, Hunter?
Actually, last month.
Okay,
I think.
I like it.
Maybe earlier this month. It was around when I read Paralandra, which was, within a month ago.
Nice. Well, I'm excited to catch up on that and kind of finish that story. And I think that's a cool way to start the grab bag with a much more recent read, even though it's a much older story than I'm sure most of what we're going to be talking about over the coming minutes.
Yeah. All right. What do you got?
So I wrote these beautiful things whenever we started the grab bag tradition, and I have not looked at them since. So I have no idea what I'm about to pull out of this bag, and I hope I still remember it. Oh, that's a great one. Okay. I was hoping I was going to get one of these today, but I didn't. Hold on. So, I think you know this, Hunter. I subscribe to 2 magazines. I receive other ones, but I receive ones from our college and my other college and grad school, and I receive one from some random other organization that got my information at some point. But I pay for 2 things. One is the yearly whole seed catalog. And some other seed catalogs. I get those in the mail.
Didn't we do one of those on a...
We did this already. Yep.
Yes.
This was one of my previous stories. The other one is the Old House Journal.
Okay.
Probably gives somebody pretty big insight into my life. If you're wondering why there's all that extra noise, it's because it just so happens that I keep my Old House journals right behind where I'm currently sitting. And so I just grabbed kind of the two most recent ones. I think it comes out once a quarter or so. Or every other month. I love these, Hunter. It makes me so happy and so excited whenever I get one of these in the mail. My house is 105 years old. It was built in 1920, which one could. Sorry, it was built in 1921. It's always challenging with houses built that say they're built in 1920 because that whenever people don't actually know when a house is built, they'll say it was built in 1920. Like if it's an older house, but our house was built in 1921, and so when we moved in 2022, we were 2021. Sorry, I guess we were starting the new century.
Mm-hmm.
We officially started the second century of this house, which is a really cool thing. And because houses outlive us, at least our earthly bodies. And so what we get to do is we steward the space. It takes on our personality, but when we're gone, somebody else is going to live here. We did it right. And they're going to, make it their own personality. You can see some of the work I've done, just even sitting behind me, a bookshelf I've built. But this Old House Journal walks through houses from around the country, and I've drawn so much inspiration from ideas and just some of the beauty. They even have like little trainings, like, hey, how do you unstick a sliding door or a pocket door? How do you old windows we've got a couple in our house have like ropes and dollies and like levers and like a pulley system inside of them. Like, how do you fix those without, how do you mitigate lead poisoning? Those types of things. Or mitigate lead so you don't get lead poisoning. How do you patch a plaster wall? This is a page I've specifically tagged because I know at some point in the nearish future, I will run into that issue. And they just have some, like, I bought a vent fan for over my oven a while ago. I've not put it in yet. It's just a very kind of plain one, but I'm going to vent it outside. But you can see here and a look of what they could, like, an older style is going to be. And so what I plan on doing after I build mine or put mine in is to build a facade to make it look grand and elegant, even though it's primarily for show. And I love the look, the feel of old houses, because some houses you look at and it's like, man, that looks like it could be on my street. Some you're like, oh man, those are in my area. Some of them you're like, man, that's a countryside home. I know your family purchased an old house at some point, and your parents fixed it up, right?
Yeah,
I remember correctly.
Renovated.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I love how creative people are, and there are very few things that make me feel more satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment, maybe is a better wording, than taking a visual idea and putting it into practice in my home, with my own hands, my own mind, my hands. I take ideas from Old House Journal. I spend a lot of time on Pinterest and looking around, making my own plan, and then I'll put it into action.
Would you say you tell stories about your house?
I think you can tell the story of a house through the rooms you walk through. And this is a storytelling, right? A journal. This journal is a story, right? There are tons of stories in here of homes Um, but I definitely think as you walk through my home, and in fact, I give many people tours of it. I just gave a truncated tour yesterday of our home. I
Hmm.
tell the stories of the rooms and what they were created for and what they're used for now and why we've made some of those decisions and how we've built onto it. And I have my mind, ideas in my mind for what they might look like in the future and kind of what types of stories we might tell then. For instance, when our house was built, it's a 4 square home with a craftsman interior. I used to just say it was a craftsman house, but it's a 4 square home with a craftsman interior. It's not a bungalow. Um, it was built with a formal dining room with the absolutely beautiful like wood paneled ceilings, where you have there's a specific word that is missing my is pit. I can't think of right now, but it's like a checkerboard ceiling with the wood,
Hmm.
um, the natural wood, and it was never painted in our home. And then the last homeowners built an addition onto the back of the house that continued the same style as the house, but was in like an in-law suite. So when we bought this house, we turned the in-law suite is like a sunroom. We turned the sunroom into into our dining room, and we turned our formal dining room into the playroom.
Hmm.
And so, right, it's part of the story I tell of it is how the family that lives in the home changes the dynamic and changes the usage of the different rooms.
Hmm.
And this is also where you make all the memories,
Hmm.
right? How many stories are you going to spend telling? How many years of stories are you going to tell um, about the interactions that happened in the room you're sitting in right now, Hunter,
Hmm.
or in the kitchen, or in what is now your kid's room, but last time I slept at your house, was a random guest room with a computer in it, and it was
Yes,
probably
an
something else
office.
before then. Yeah, it was an office.
Hmm. Well, thank you, Eric. uh, it's funny because we did so much work on our house when I was a kid. Um, my dad does pretty much everything except for plumbing. Um, you know, and he does really high quality finished work, interior work. Um, I just remember going to Home Depot and being so bored when I was like 10. Used to do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's taken me like 20 years to get over that. To the point where now I'm like more interested.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and, starting to think about our family and, buying a house and stories we're going to tell and all of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny how there's so many different feelings that people have about houses.
Yes.
Um,
Agreed. What's up next?
okay, this is an interesting one. I got Lance Armstrong.
Ooh.
So
Okay.
those of you who know me, you know that I like cycling, especially if you knew me in like high school and college. In high school, I was on a cycling team, and uh, we rode a lot, and a few of us were able to compete at a fairly high level. But because our hometown had in Cambridge, New York, it was the home of the Tour of the Battenkill, which was the biggest single day race in the country.
Hmm.
And it's still going on. It's kind of changed owners and organizers. The original organizers, who was actually my coach in high school, cycling coach, is coming back to organize it. And
Oh wow.
yeah, so, but he had some connections to like pretty high level athletes. I was able to meet Floyd Landis, who was a 3-time tour winner before he was investigated for doping.
No.
And Floyd Landis was on Lance's team, and Floyd Landis actually was the one who started the process of, he started blowing the whistle on Lance and led to the investigation.
Really?
That revealed the truth. So if you don't know about Lance Armstrong, I should start there. He was a 7-time tour winner, the Tour de France, the biggest cycling tour in the world, really. It's, you know, it's kind of the race that all of the big tour racers want to win, and he won it 7 times when he was racing.
It's a lot of times.
Yeah. And, you know, when I was riding, it was I never really got totally into Lance, like worshiping Lance, but I had a Livestrong bracelet.
Oh yeah, we all did. Right? I mean, because he not only won it that many times, but he had cancer and beat cancer, and then came back and won it again.
Yeah, and I used to watch, there are YouTube videos about some of showing his big moments. A couple that I remember is, I forget which climb it was on. It might have been Mount Ventoux or one of the big climbs. He was in the group pack, and he just turned around and looked at all of them in the face, and then he just started walking away from them. They just didn't even try to catch him.
What?
Yeah,
that is epic. What a
yeah. So my friends and I used to like reenact those moments, like when we were just messing around out on the road, and racing each other and stuff, and on our team. But it was interesting because our coach, I remember we were talking about Lance, and our coach said, like, yeah, in 2 or 3 years, some things are going to start coming out about Lance. And they did, because Floyd Landis, he blew the whistle. And I actually met Floyd, really cool guy, very good at air hockey, really likes The Big Lebowski, the movie The Big Lebowski. But a really nice guy. And he was really kind enough to like actually go on a ride with us. And I also met Greg LeMond once, which was cool. He came to the Bat and Kill, and I got to like shake his hand and take a picture with him. Greg LeMond was, I think, a 4-time winner of the Tour. He was a U.S. rider, and he never doped, and he never liked Lance Armstrong because he was pretty sure that Lance was doping. But yeah, so Lance was a story, and I think Lance really, one of the quotes I've heard about Lance, I can't remember exactly who said it, but he said it's either the greatest comeback story in the history of sport, or it's the greatest betrayal in the history of sport. Because Lance, he really leaned into the story. He made, he got cancer, which now they think could have been related to all the, steroids and stuff that he was taking. And he came back from cancer, and he won the Tour 7 times. And it's a great story.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But he was cheating. And yes, almost everyone in the pro circuit was doing some kind of doping. But Lance, his whole team was built around the Tour de France. And if you wanted to be on Lance's team, you had to dope. And that's what happened to Floyd Landis. He got onto Lance's team as a young guy, got, indoctrinated into the doping program. And then, Floyd got his titles stripped, and he saw Lance come back to the Tour and getting all of this glory, and decided to tell the truth. But so Lance Armstrong, I still think about him from time to time. Apparently Lance has a podcast. I have no desire to listen to it. he spent so much time lying, like, because he would be asked all the time, and Lance is like, I've never cheated, I've never failed a drug test, and he would get very defensive and really disparage the people who were attacking him, and someone who's lied for so many years, I just don't. I think they've really wasted their goodwill. So, but it's like a cautionary tale, and has been a big story in my life that has shaped me.
Yeah, that's one of the most shocking, like, sporting events and truths that's kind of hit the world in the 21st century.
Mm. Yeah.
Oof. Thanks for sharing that, Hunter. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's yeah. Depending on the age of the individual listening, I'm sure you have your own thoughts on Lance Armstrong. I guess there's a documentary out on Netflix, or on probably on Netflix, on one of the streaming pieces, about like, it's talking about it and about like what doping can do in cycling, as far as increasing your strength and speed and endurance, and with the clarity of what doping can do, it makes it very clear that almost every single cycler at that time was doping.
Yeah. So,
which again doesn't justify anybody doping.
Yeah, the Lance documentary on Netflix, I think it's on Netflix, is pretty good. Explains it pretty well. But one small tidbit, then we'll get to yours, is the doping in cycling is not really steroids, because like raw strength doesn't really help you that much in might help you sprint, but before you sprint, you have to cycle, like you have to race 96 miles till you get to the finish line.
Ridiculous.
So it's really it's really about endurance, and I have a limited understanding, but I think one of the main things that Lance used was EPO, and I'm pretty sure the main thing it does is it increases your like oxygen content, the amount of oxygen that you can carry and utilize. And so a lot of times, if you watch those old videos, a lot of the riding, it looks like really like almost unnatural, like, because if you've ever actually you've done bike riding, you know how like variable your performance can be on any given day, and you watch them and they're just like so consistent all the time. And one of the reasons that Greg LeMond never liked Lance is because he kind of was running the numbers on Lance's speed and his VO2 max, and he was like, yeah, that's not possible. It's nice to see Greg LeMond kind of get some vindication, because he took a lot of flack for not supporting Lance.
Thanks.
Anyway, to you.
It's always cool to learn more new things.
Yeah.
What do I got next? Let's hope this is a gem. Oh, that's another one that I have right around here. Give me a moment. I like this. I chose the right place to sit today. So I've talked about houses, old houses. Now, what's the logical next step? It's to talk about birds. The next story that I'm sharing is the story of Wingspan. Wingspan is a board game that my wife and I love. It's been a while since we've played it. Definitely have not played it since our second child was born. We're just now starting to get back into having time to play board games. But Wingspan is a board game that is focused on building the best bird sanctuary, pretty much. You draw bird cards. You roll dice that have different things that birds might eat: fish, caterpillars, berries, wheat, rodents, those types of things. And you lay eggs, and you place birds. And the birds end up in either the river habitat, the forest habitat, or the grasslands habitat. And let me give the caveat, as I'm sure if you were to be reading the rules, they have different words for everything I'm saying right now. But in terms of speaking by the rules, I assure you that I have read them and know how to play this game well. That matters to me deeply. Anyways, a little bit of legalist when it comes to board games and rules. Like, if you're going to break the rules, you have to know what the rules are and why you're breaking them, and it needs to be because the rules are bad. You know this about me, Hunter. And so...
Totally unexpected facet of your personality.
I hope you're being honest about that. Anyways, so it's just such a beautiful game. So in this game, every single one of the bird cards are hand-drawn pictures. You've played this, Hunter. You know what these cards look like. If you haven't played Wingspan, I really highly encourage you to look it up. They're absolutely stunning pictures, and it gives you a little bit of history of the bird, where it's from. We own two of the expansions, Wingspan, like Europa and Oceania, which is based on different parts of the world where birds are. The first one is just North America. Oceania. Thank you. The first one's just North America, and in the Europa one is a good expansion. It just adds more bird cards and a couple more different types of actions. The Oceania, it makes the game too complicated. It brings in new board. I don't recommend it. It changes the game too much. In ways that don't make it more enjoyable. They just make it more confusing. But I do think both of them also give you different color eggs. This is going to be a random thing to say, but one of the pieces of this game that makes it so enjoyable is the pieces. Like, the birds are beautiful, the dice are nice, wooden. The little like rodents that you might, and like food that you might eat are like, these little like pogs, wooden, basic cardboard cutouts. But the eggs are like some type of plastic, but they look like an egg that's been cut off at the bottom so it can stand up. But the way they've been made just makes them very tactile. It's almost, it's not kinetic sand, but it's like the type of thing that you want to just hold on to.
Very eatable.
Yes. And you want to hold on to it. And so, right, we've made this very clear on our podcast that when we talk about stories and storytellers, we're pretty broad in the meaning of that. This game tells a beautiful story as you're building your habitat and you're competing against everybody else. And it's full of fun and laughter, and it's a good competitive one, but it's also a great game for people that aren't used to board games, so it can bring lots of people together. It's not too long, too hard to explain. It's not the fastest game to explain, but it's pretty good first game or second like board game as you're moving from your clues and your monopolies to your terraforming Marses. Right, as you're going from board game Monopoly to like really intense 2-hour board game, this is much closer to a beginner level board game. And a home rule we have when playing with friends is, and it just came up recently, one of Melanie's friends brought up the ridiculousness of our home rule. On the bird cards, when you play a bird, you're supposed to just kind of share the bird you're playing and the actions it can give you and stuff like that. But we also make people read the Latin name of the bird right under the
Oh,
main name of it, and it is absolutely hilarious. Hearing some people, hearing people try to name these things, and so let me give you an example that I just randomly picked one. This is the parrot crossbill. It's an orange bird. It's got a crossbill. It's got a weird bill, but it's and the Latin part is also written in cursive, which makes it incredibly hard to read. It's also known as the Loxia Pitiopsittacus.
I think some of those are Greek
Pitiopsittacasis.
too.
Pitiopsittacus.
I think there's some Greek in there too.
And that one?
Psittacus.
This is all one word. Pitiopsittacatus. Pytyopissittacatus.
Oh yeah, that's Greek. PSI. Yeah.
How about this one? The Actitus macularius.
Macularius. That sounds vaguely Latin. You know, the thing with the scientific names is they borrow from both Greek and Latin,
Yeah,
I think.
that's true.
So
How dare they? The barn swallow, also known as the Hirundo rustica. So Greek and Latin.
Yeah.
But this is not your story to tell, okay, Hunter?
Sorry. Well,
Get out
do
of
you
my
have
face.
any Wingspan stories? I've played Wingspan a few times.
Okay.
Well,
I can look at the. Do you have a go-to Wingspan story? Is that why you asked?
Not really. I would challenge your statement that it's good for somewhat beginners. I think it depends on who you are. Because I know people who play board games, quite a lot, and they found Wingspan really, really difficult to figure out on their own. So I think it really depends on who you are, because
who's teaching you.
Yeah,
I think being taught board games is an important skill that not everybody has.
Yeah, well, different people respond to different types of teaching styles differently.
Totally. Yes, it's not our go-to original game or first board game to teach people is Azul. That's our favorite board game for somebody that doesn't think they like board games. But the nice thing about Wingspan is you can just build pretty birds. You don't have to be competitive in it, We first got this. The first time we played this was just over 4 years ago, and so it's a game that's made its way from Chicago to Rochester. And I can just, as I'm looking through the previous scores in different games, I'm seeing people that are in all different walks of life of our lives playing this together. And so I don't have a specific story, but it definitely brings a smile to my face and an excitement to me that makes me want to play it again with my wife and some friends.
I played it with some guys that I also played Magic: The Gathering with, and we were all using like Magic terms when we were playing the birds. It was like, here goes my 3-mana barn swallow. It's really, if you don't know Magic: The Gathering, it's not funny at all. And
are you kidding me? I know nothing about it, but I found that absolutely hilarious. I'm dying inside.
Oh, I could tell.
I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. Just pure, I just rolling around. That's cool though. And let me say,
I really like the thing you put the dice in.
Yes. So actually, I have the bird feeder up separately. We had to keep that one out of our kids' reach and our cats' reach too. But they just released a new version of it, of Wingspan, this year or this past year, at least in time for Christmas. That's dragon based. It's called Worm WYRM span. And so my brother-in-law got it for Christmas. I'm really excited to see what makes it unique. If it's just the different cards, or if there's a different if it's the same playing mechanics and like just the visuals are different, or if there's some different mechanics. But you gotta know that I'm gonna get myself a Saphira and take on the rest of the dragons as I and griffins, of course, as I vie to rule the world. You're up, Hunter.
Sounds like a friendly game.
How about one more each? Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Are you rolling them?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you're rolling them like dice.
I am. I couldn't find a bowl nearby.
Okay.
I had to really MacGyver it, but
MacGyver.
I've got Tron Legacy.
Tron Legacy, the movie?
The movie Tron Legacy.
Okay.
I have seen this movie at least 3 times. I don't know. Have you seen Tron Legacy, Eric?
I think it might have fallen into one of my late night watches, but not. I am not super familiar with the Troniverse.
Okay.
Tronverse.
So, I mean, I think there's only 2 movies as far as I know.
They're working on another one.
It's
right?
shown up in a few Disney things.
Yeah. There's a game too.
Right? Yeah, but the main thing is the first movie. Really, Tron is about a guy who finds a way to enter the computer, and he creates what's called the grid, and is kind of sucked into the grid, and Tron is sort of like a hero who fights for the users, kind of like anti-malware. But there's all these really crazy visualizations of, if you watch the first one, it's really old, so the visual effects are kind of campy, but it is still kind of charming. You have the light cycles races where the cycles have these like tails that come off of them, that it's like a light wall, and if you try to get your opponent to crash into your light wall that's coming off of your tail. I think there's some tanks. There's the disc throwing, where you throw discs at each other. And then Tron Legacy, I think, is a descendant of the original guy. And he's kind of he's a rebel. Oh, he's his son. Yeah, because what happens is Jeff Bridges, who I think he's in the original Tron, he gets sucked into the grid and he never comes back, and he leaves his son. And so now the second movie, Tron Legacy, his son is trying to go after him. And the sort of corporation that owns the computer is kind of, the son has to like infiltrate it and get into the computer room and get into the grid. And there's not really a plot, honestly. It's just, he just gets into the grid and he has to fight Clue, who kind of took over. Clue helped Jeff Bridges. I don't even remember his character's name. I just remember Jeff Bridges. I love Jeff Bridges. I don't know if you know this about me, but
hey, good choice. Don't you love True Grit? Isn't Jeff Bridges?
I love True Grit? I love Jeff Bridges, True Grit. The John Wayne one's pretty good, but honestly, my
Iron
heart
Man
belongs to the
original Iron Man.
He's good in Iron Man.
Terrifying.
Not my favorite Jeff Bridges movie.
But he's terrifying at the end of that movie.
He is, yeah. I mean, he's a good actor. Like, he found the thing that he does well, and he does it well.
It's true. Tron Legacy.
In The Big Lebowski too.
Yeah, you brought that up twice. Not a great. I did not enjoy Tron. Did not enjoy The Big Lebowski, but that's kind of a weird.
It really depends on who you are.
I think it also depends on how old you are.
Yeah, but there's some funny lines in that movie though. But
Tron Legacy, not a highly
No,
critically acclaimed movie. It's like really
no,
a flop, right? At least it
yeah,
wasn't. They didn't
but
make any more after it.
since when have I ever cared about
Yeah,
whether
of
a
course,
movie was a
of
flop or not?
course.
And this movie, I think it was on night. It would like come on Netflix, and I would watch it, and then it'd go off. It would come on Netflix again, and I'd watch it again. And like, it's just, I love. I think some of the things that they do in that movie visually is like some of the most imaginative sci-fi that I've ever seen. Um, and I've watched a lot of sci-fi.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and I love the music. I believe they got Daft Punk to do the music for Tron Legacy, and they did pretty well. Um, the actors are decent enough. Jeff Bridges is he's Jeff
Jeff
Bridges.
Bridges, yeah. Jeff
Um,
Bridges. Yeah. Bridges.
and I'm really sad that there's not another one. Who's the female actor? Olivia.
Wild.
Yeah,
I
Olivia
was looking at.
Wilde. She's great. She's sort of like Jeff Bridges's virtual daughter that he has um, in the grid, and you get to see some like really cool remakes of the disc fights and the light cycles, and they go even beyond that to like light planes and things, and you get to see Tron come back. But yeah, I mean, like it's most of it is vibes, really. I think for me,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, honestly, like just go watch it and see what you think, because like there's a lot of bad sci-fi coming out, and I really don't think Tron Legacy is bad sci-fi. Like it's a pretty well done movie, and the story, even though it's not like a complicated plot. He just gets into the grid and then he tries to get out of the grid, and he ends up getting out with Olivia Wilde's character, and their sort of like relationship and um as it develops is actually kind of touching. um and like the scene when they finally get out of the grid and she's like riding on the motorcycle um behind him, and they're on the freeway, and I think it's like San Francisco, and the sun is coming up, and it's a real sun. It's not a grid sun. It's a really beautiful shot. And I still remember it to this day. And lots of scenes from that movie I can remember very well.
Okay.
And I would watch it again.
That's good
I
to
kind
know.
of want to watch it again now. But
Yeah. I mean, I have seen this movie, but I have no
Mhm.
memory of it. But I remember that I've seen it, or that I've seen enough of it to feel like I've seen it. And so you're
Mhm.
making me want to figure out where it's streaming now on.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, I think if they did the video game adaptation right, it could be really good. And
on Disney Plus. I will probably rewatch at some point in the next few months.
yeah, it's a good movie. I would pick it over a lot of things these days. But, all right, Eric, close this out.
Close this out. Let's end with the winner. Is this a winner? Why did I write in the dark side of this? Oh, this is a winner. I must have been looking at this bookshelf when I when I wrote down these cards. How funny is this? The thing we're going to end with on our podcast about the stories and storytellers that shape us are story cards. This is actually from North Point Church, which is the church that Andy Stanley is the pastor of, or at least has been the pastor of. But they're not. They were created as a small group resource, but they can be used in any group setting. And the premise of story cards is to get a group talking and really to start build some relationships and allow those who think differently to feel comfortable sharing about whatever it is that you want to talk about. And so this is the second iteration of story cards, which I like it better than the first iteration. But just imagine, I don't know, roughly 40 to 50 cards. I just have random pictures on them, right? This is an escalator, either going up or down. Somebody sitting at a coffee shop, a mother goose with the baby, a little kid playing Jenga, somebody looking at an alarm clock at 7:20 p.m. over a highway, a random sign in the middle of the desert saying, pointing two different ways, the guy lifting weights at the gym, somebody hang gliding, pot of coffee, a couple kissing, ice cream cones. There's always my favorite, or two of them that I really like. A chain around a fence, and then this is the real winner. It's almost always chosen. It's a green crayon amongst a box of red crayons. They're just random pictures, right? You look at it and you're like, okay. I mean, most people would see this thing and say, well, that's what is that for? It seems like that might be a waste of time. But this is a go-to tool that I use when trying to connect with a group of people, and trying to get us to think a little bit creatively, and to be open and honest. And so what I'll do, and I've done this for staff-related things, for other things related to church and other small group settings, is I'll put these in the middle of a group of anywhere from 4 to 12 people, and I'll ask a question. And the first question I usually ask is something, pretty, not super superficial, but an icebreaker type question. I'll ask, like, pick a card that reminds you of a favorite experience you've had this past month, or pick a card that relates to one of your favorite activities, something that allows us to get to know each other a little bit better. But then, the second question, I'll ask usually 3 or 4 questions, and so people will grab the card. And then once everybody has their card, and some people will grab 2 cards, some people will want to grab the same card, and that's fine. There's no real rules to this. Some people will know what they want right away. Some people will have no idea and say, "Oh my goodness, this is too creative." We'll then go around and share, "Hey, why did you grab this card?" And some people share 2 or 3 words. Some people share a couple minutes, and then we'll move on to later questions. And later questions might ask something like, "Hey, what does home mean to you? Which picture reminds you of home?" Then I'll ask something, if it's in like a work-related setting, I'll ask something along the lines of, which card envisions where you want us to be in a year? And as you look at this, where do you want to be in the year? And maybe somebody will bring up the ice cream cones. Say, "Hey, I want us to be in a place where we're celebrating, and where we're celebrating together across our diversity and across the things that really brought us together." Or maybe I'll ask a question of, like, what is it, a small group setting, like, what does your relationship with God look like? And somebody might pick out this picture. And this is a picture of a woman standing in a sunbeam. And the nice thing is, you can interpret this however you want, but I see this and I think about just the warm rays of God shining on you. You know how my cat doesn't like sitting in sunbeams? He's weird. Most cats that I have experienced do. But just how you can, like, when you stand in a sunbeam, if you're in the right space, close your eyes, you just like are warmed by the heat of the sun. And it can, my office right now is in the low 60s. It's really, really cold. But just the warmth that I could feel from God's presence. And I've seen and experienced in many different spaces individuals willing to become pretty open and honest, and share real things, um, as they use these story cards, and often people will start with some, oh my goodness, what are we doing? And by the end, we're having a good time. There's laughter. There's real meaningful conversations. They have some basic like recommended. You can buy this. I think it was like $12. Just type in story cards. You can make them your own too. A lot of people have. I like the being made for me and kind of having a professional quality for them. But there's examples, like they've got example questions like, which picture best represents something you are grateful for, or a favorite memory from childhood, or your perfect weekend, your life right now, your feelings about church or religion, a cause of your stress, something that made you laugh recently. So for those of you who are like, hey, I can't imagine trying to think of a question on a spot for a group, they have those built into here. But you can also use them strategically as you're thinking about how to build relationships and how to get people thinking, in terms of where are you now and where do you want us to be. So I haven't used these in probably a little over a year now, but now that I bring them up, I want to put them back in action, and I just have so many good memories and experiences with them. So. Have I done them with you before, Hunter?
I don't think so. Yeah. I was going to ask, where do you see this podcast in 5 years?
Well, let's see. Let me draw a random one and see if that gives us a good answer. Is this the card you're looking for?
Oh, okay. I don't know how I feel about that.
Maybe 50 years. This is possibly an older couple sitting. One of them's in a wheelchair. Imagine us 50 years from now at a table. Let me talk to you about story cards. This one day, 65 years ago, we met. Lots of laughter, lots of joy. 5 years from now, got no idea what's going to be going on in our lives. I mean, we'll have 6 to 8-year-olds to 9-year-olds. How old is your oldest now?
He's 4.
He's 4. My goodness. And so I'm sure there'll be many, many activities going on in our lives. But hopefully we'll have even better rhythms for rest and for meeting together. That's my 5-year hope. And maybe we'll finish talking through all of Tolkien by then.
Yeah.
Or at least East of Eden.
Right. Yes, that is our plan. We're doing Paralandra next week, or 2 weeks. Recording and editing are going to be different timeline, but our plan after Paralandra is to do East of Eden Part 3. So
Part 3.
Now's your chance. We've given you lots of time. If you've been reading along, you're gonna have some more time too. If you want to read along with us. But East of Eden Part 3. I'm excited to get back into East of Eden. I've been reading some stuff that lately that has really been testing my patience. So I'm happy to get back into Steinbeck.
You're talking about Genesis, right?
No, not Genesis. Different books.
In East of Eden, Part 3.
Oh, yes.
Talking about Genesis.
East of Eden, Part 3. I thought you were mentioning about the stuff that I've been reading.
No, I don't know what you've been reading. Talking about Genesis, right? That East of Eden kind of has some of that conversation with.
Yes, yeah, Cain and Abel.
Some great scholars around.
Spending a lot of time in Genesis. Paralandra. A lot of Genesis. Dream of a Ridiculous Man. East of Eden.
We can talk about innocence next week.
Supplementary class materials.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Recommended readings.
Yes.
Not required. Okay. Hunter, any last thoughts as we head out tonight?
No. Thank you for listening. I hope it's given you some helped you appreciate stories for what they are, going back to the dream of the ridiculous man. I think this podcast for me is an attempt to elevate stories themselves above the cognition of stories, because I think so often we are concerned with what the story says or means or what it does or the movements that it creates or the thoughts that it brings up. And yet there's, it's a story. There's a pleasant feeling about just reading a story and letting it be a story and shaping you.
The Hrasa on Falkandra would argue that the conversation about the story is part of the story itself.
Oh, it is part of it, but I feel like in our culture we tend to make that the only conversation.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah. I'm a big Bills fan, Buffalo Bills fan. Got to be in my area. And I've been watching a lot of news and reading a lot of articles about the Bills-Chiefs game. And the game hasn't happened yet. And yet the game has already happened many times. And I can read all of these things about, who's going to win? How's it going to go? What's the score going to be? What's it been in the past? Who's set up to be better? How does this thing? But the thing that makes me actually excited is not that. It's this
right.
The story unfolding.
Right.
That helps build the anticipation. And obviously we're talking about the other side of it. Most of what you're talking about is cognition. But it can happen beforehand too.
Right.
But the actual experience of it is a thrill, is it unto itself that we can lose sight of pretty easily.
Very easily. And with that, we'll see you next time.
It's a really bad way to end a podcast. Do a visual.
Cheers.
Cheers. I finished. There's no love line left.